I'm grateful to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. No, it's great to meet you. And I always begin all of my shows by asking a question that I've been trying to put to rest, but it's just so pertinent in our lives, which is COVID.
Mhm.
5 years ago, we were all going through it. The world was changing. How did you get through the pandemic era? And how has it affected the way that you operate today?
Wow. Got through the pandemic era in pieces, I think is the best way to say that.
Yeah.
Went in sales and realized very quickly what was happening. Everybody canceled everything. It was like, this is not going to work. Left sales very quickly. I was very proactive. I could kind of see the stupidity coming. And I said, you know what? This is not going to get better before it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of connections with, a trucking company that was in bread. And I said, you know what? I still have my license from years ago. I can, do this. And now we're part of the supply chain. Let's, do you have a spot for me? He said, yeah, come on board. And then it was, job security, overtime, money, the whole bit. If I hadn't made that move when I made that move, it would have been a whole different story for me and my family during COVID. But because I did and I was ahead of it, we actually got through COVID fine, to be honest. And,
Yeah.
and I almost feel guilty saying that, but only because we all saw it coming.
Yeah.
And as a family, we all had the same opinion of it and went, okay, let's just fix it, move forward,
Yeah.
take care of our own. Here we go. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that's how.
That's the most proactive way. So let me ask you this. Right
Mhm.
now, with the dust settled, so to speak, if you were to be put in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and
Mhm.
one of the kids was like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer today?
Today, I am a, podcaster, a podcast coach, and a men's leadership coach. That's what I do.
What did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
A boxer.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be a boxer. I was absolutely enamored with the Rocky movies. Didn't have a great family situation growing up. Didn't really have a dad, and when I did have a dad, I wished that wasn't the guy. So, a lot of abuse and that type of thing. So I didn't really have that male role model, and so I had to find it wherever I could. Found it in the movies, and found it with Sylvester Stallone and Rocky Balboa and everything he stood for. And I was just like, you know what? I felt very much like an underdog, even at a young age, at 12. Everybody else had everything. I didn't. I had to fight for everything, the whole bit. And I just loved that whole idea
Yeah.
that you built yourself up, you went out into the world, and you fought for what you were going to get. And if you did your best, nobody could stop you. So I wanted to be a boxer, man. That was it.
But what were the internal motors that were clicking in you that has made you become a podcaster and a coach and a speaker and to find success? What were those internal seeds that were harvested that has become you today?
Sure. I think that it all comes from childhood, like with most of us, right? So I've had to fight for everything. And the idea of working for somebody else has never set well with me. I've always wanted to be on my own. I've always wanted to go out and make my own living and be responsible for myself. The coaching part is is a little more empathetic, and along with all of that fighting and everything else that I had to do growing up, I had a mother who was sick with cancer. And that fell on me as the oldest child to take care of her, to take care of my siblings, that type of thing. So I very quickly in life learned that taking care of the people that you care about is your job. It's what you have to do. There is nobody else doing it. That means you have to. And there isn't there's no option to just, well, I'll do it later. If you're taking care of people that are depending on you, it has to happen.
Yeah.
There isn't a day off. There's no option to not do it.
Yeah.
And so I learned that. And in doing that, I think that really led me to coaching because I've always wanted to help, especially kids. My kids is where I started with it when they were real young. But then all the other kids that looked up to me and came to me for guidance and everything else, I wanted to coach them on how to not just be good at their sports or whatever it was I was coaching them on, but also to be good at life and to be, good men. And so, I mean, that's been really important to me since I began it 2 decades ago. And now I'm still coaching. I'm not coaching youths anymore. I'm coaching grown-ups, but I still coach everybody to try and help them as people first, and as podcasters, and that type of thing second.
So who ended up being kind of that father figure, that hero for you that's inspired you to become who you are?
Still Rocky.
Okay.
Yeah, still, to be honest, probably Stallone and everything that he's done, which is a little crazy because it's like he's an actor. You know what I mean? He's not really there. But I would say probably the story of that. Closest thing I had to a male role model in real life was my father-in-law, my wife's, dad, when he was around, and we had a great relationship. But I was pretty formed by then, so it was great to have that in that relationship with him, and in some ways, he delivered on that. But I really was already me before I met him and
Yeah.
before he became my father-in-law. So I mean, I really just never had a real life male role model. I had to create my own and decide. I had to decide who I was going to follow because there wasn't anybody saying follow me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let me ask you, the one thing that was great about the pandemic, and I've been doing podcasting and interviews for a long time,
Yeah.
was that all of a sudden it became the thing. It became a central theme. Everybody talked about it. It was in popular media, and it's just gained more and more popularity.
hmm
So my question to you is this. Did you always see yourself in front of a microphone and getting into this, or was this always a dream of yours? How did all of this acumen and this history in podcasting become you?
I would love to say I've always wanted to be a podcaster, but that wasn't even a thing when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
Yeah, right.
So, you asked about the 12-year-old thing. There wasn't podcasting back then. There was radio, there was TV.
Sure.
But I always wanted to be a public speaker. I
Okay.
always wanted to be a motivational speaker. I wanted to be the coach in front of the room, in front of the team, and I wanted to be a teacher of some kind, up in front of the class, presenting and educating and helping. And so it was public speaking really that kind of brought me this way. Before COVID, I was in real estate for a very long time and owned my own company, 5 offices in 2 states, the whole 9 yards. I'm a victim of 2008 in that storyline, which we don't have to go into, but
Right.
just one of those things. So, but through all that, I was a mentor. I coached, I trained, I did seminars, I spoke at conventions, that type of thing, because of what I had accomplished in real estate and the training I was doing in real estate. So, I mean, I got into that because I wanted to public speak ever since I was little. And when COVID happened, of course, all that went away. And so then it was all right. I have these messages I want to get out. I'm working this full-time jobs, slinging bread over here, trying to make sure that, I can keep bringing a good paycheck into the house. And then there's this podcasting thing that comes along. And it's like, wait a minute. So I can kind of public speak
Yep.
into my mic and my computer and get a message out there, hopefully to a lot of people
Yep.
eventually, right? And all I have to do is this, to buy this, plug this in, and start talking. So it was really just well, then let's do that. Let's try this. And I had very strong feelings about a lot of topics. And so I started my first podcast, Power of Man, which focused on masculinity, focused on fathers, focused on husbands, focused on, helping them to remain strong through how badly COVID and the climate and society was just beating us down. I survived a couple of really low points. And when I did, I was alone. And I really decided, look, I'm not, if I can help one guy out there not be alone at that moment, when the entire world and everything else is on top of him and he feels like he can't take another breath, um, then I want to do that. And that's where the first podcast came from. And that's how I got started.
Podcasting is such a wonderful realm that human beings can finally understand that we're not so polarized, that we are all kind of in this gray area. We're all going towards the same things. But for you doing this on a regular basis and coaching people in this process, what do you love the best about this world of podcasting?
Oh, goodness. The world of podcasting, the community.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Meeting great people like you, everybody else I come in contact with. There's something about, and I'm sure you know this too, there's something about being a podcaster. Um, Podcasters get each other.
Yeah.
We're all trying to do the same thing, even if it's in a little bit of a different way. We're all running into a lot of the same problems. We all have some of the same issues. It's
Yeah.
like there's something about this community where we just sort of go, yeah, I get you, you know?
Yeah.
So
I
I
dig it.
love the community. Love the
Yeah.
community, man.
I totally agree. So I got to know, what's the best speech that you've ever witnessed in your life?
Ooh, best speech. Wow. All right. I listened to some of your episodes, man. I thought I was prepared, but that's a different one.
There's doozies in there.
Yeah,
You know how it goes.
you slung a new one in there. All right, I like that. Best speech I've ever heard. Goodness gracious. That's wow, there's a lot of really good ones too, but and I'm going to go back to my roots.
Yeah,
Best speech I ever heard, and probably the one I've repeated more than ever, is Rocky on the beach in Rocky 3,
yeah,
talking about how he's afraid, talking about how he's worried about losing everything, and I that's gone through my head more times than not because that's what I'm constantly afraid of. And
yeah,
that's one of those battles. That's where the spiritual warfare hits me. That's where the devil tries to get me on a regular basis. And you're off doing your own thing. You feel like you're really empowered. You feel like you got everything lined up. But man, there's always that thing in the back of your head going, "Are you good enough? Are you really here? Are you worth it?"
yep.
And he just hit it so hard on that beach in that speech he gave that day. I mean, granted, I'm a Rocky fan, so I'm a little, you know,
Sure.
you
Well,
know,
I'm a kid of the 80s and I loved Rocky too. And
you know,
my dad was from Brooklyn and raised in Long Island, so there was that lineage. He loved
you
boxing. In fact, the first time that I ever really saw my dad cry was when Mick died.
yeah, it's tough.
And I looked over and I was like, oh, because it was bad. But the what, and I used to mimic things. Like if I had a flight of steps, I would act like I'm going up in Philly to the top, right?
Right.
But the one thing I could never do was drink a glass of eggs, raw eggs. There was no way I could do it. No way. Did you ever try
Yeah,
to do that?
I've done it. Oh yeah,
Okay.
I used to do it all the time. I hated
Okay.
every minute of it, but man, because you watch the movies, you're influenced as a kid. You don't have any strong, parental guidance really. I mean, your mom's trying, but she's dying, so it's like what do you do?
Yeah.
And here's this guy that's like everything you imagine being a man is about, and boy, he cracks all those eggs into a big glass and slugs them down.
Takes it
That
down.
must be what makes him him, right?
Uh-huh.
So, oh yeah, I was, drinking eggs and stuff, and the first couple times it didn't go well, but then I got used to it, and I
Yep.
figured out how to do it, man.
Yep.
Yeah,
E Even with Popeye, I would get canned spinach and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can take this down. Like it was awful. There was so many things in the 80s that these guys would do to become powerful. And you're like, I
that's
can't
right.
do it as a civilian, man. I'm not doing it.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was wild. So I think I know the answer to this next question, but I want to know if you could get a dream guest on your podcast, anybody on the planet and interview them, who would you interview?
Yeah, you already know. Sylvester Stallone,
Uh,
heartbeat. I wouldn't even
yeah.
blink. I would not even blink. I'm very consistent in my, hero worship. And so, yeah, I would get, especially right now with everything he's accomplished, he's still out there doing it. I'd bring him on the podcast in a New York minute.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What gets you up every day? What gets you up to not only do the best you can as a podcaster and as a coach and a speaker, but to continue to evolve, to stay on top of your game, take care of your soul and your life and your family? What is that collectively for you every day?
It's a great question. The easy answer is my kids,
Yeah.
okay, because everybody wants to say that, but if you really dig into it, it's not just my kids, it's my dad, because he wasn't there. He didn't do what he needed to do, and I have three kids. They're all grown. They're fantastic people, mostly because of my wife, I'm sure, but we're empty nesters. They're out in the world, doing what they do. But as a father, I've always been very, very active. As a father, very involved. Anything I could do to parent as a dad, I did. And so, over the years, it was, provide for them all the basics, make sure you're there, don't miss the games, impart any wisdom you may have, into them so that they can take it and grow. But now that they're all grown and they're all either married or going to be married by October and, building their own businesses and having all kinds of success, there's even more pressure on me now that I put on myself to not just be dad and be the leader and everything else, but to continue to be the example for them later in life. Because as you know, they don't need the dad I was 5 years ago. They don't need the dad that I was 15 years ago. They need the dad that they need today, which, isn't, hey, dad, can you cover my protein powder for me? or help me measure out my, chicken breasts so I can build muscle. I'm got to be the dad that's more like the life coach. Like, hey, when this happened in your marriage, or when this happened with kids, or with building a business, how'd you handle it? What'd you do? What advice can you give me? So I'm almost more of a life coach to my
Yeah.
three kids, but I have to lead by example. I can't talk to them about their health or their financial wellness or anything else if I'm a complete train wreck.
Yeah.
So that's what gets me up today. Yeah.
So, in the realm of coaching, I'm going to kind of weave together a little bit of a story. When I was in the eighth grade, there was a period of my life where I was just a punk, and I was just, trying to get attention. There was just a lot of bad habits that I had. And there was one coach, his name was Dave Rabori, and he was a Vietnam vet, and he was a really strict guy, and everybody knew that he was strict, but he took a really keen interest in me. And when I look back on my life and I think about coaches and people and role models, because there's been a lot of them, that was the dude that was around long enough and read it and wanted to help. And I think about how instrumental he was in me kind of parting the curtain and seeing some things. Who was that for you, and someone that needed a good father and needed a role model? Because obviously that coach exists in you. Who was that first one that emboldened you to feel that truth of what a coach can be for you?
In terms of who I've coached.
Well,
So
yeah, it could be a two-way thing. Like you as a human, who was a coach that took an interest and changed you? And then you as a coach, what was that moment where you knew that you were in the right place? You needed to coach people.
gotcha. Okay. The in terms of people who've coached me, like I said, I haven't a lot of had a lot of real positive male role models. And I really haven't had too many good coaches, but there was one,
Yeah,
Coach Mike Kuntz. And I hope he hears this. He was my football coach my last year in high school, and we were one of those terrible coach, terrible team, everything else, right? Till he showed up.
yeah,
And he just changed everything. And the one thing that I know I learned from him was this leading by example, um, almost like that, start the day with making your bed type of mentality. He came in and he was, shirt was perfect, shorts were perfect, whistle was shined, every day. Locker room could never be dirty. I don't care how you're doing this. Even if you scored a touchdown, if this didn't go right, we're doing it again. You catch the ball, you turn, you run to the end zone. I don't care. Turn, run to the end zone because when you get the game, that's what you're going to do. You know, all of this extra, 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 and just being totally prepared and taking all the details into account. He was the guy. And so a lot of that passed on to me in terms of how I coach. In terms of the person who lit me up and made me really realize it, it's easy to say my kids because they were just amazing athletes. But if you put an asterisk on that question and say, besides my awesome kids, who was it? A young man named Kyler Dietrich, boy. He had the whole world against him. He was left-handed when baseball didn't like left-handers
yeah,
in kids. Uh, nobody could teach him how to hit. Nobody could teach him how to pitch because he was backwards and nobody could figure it out, right?
yep,
But man, that kid would not quit.
yeah,
Just would not quit. And every day after practice, he'd come to me and go, Coach, did I do everything right? And, I would be like, yeah, man, you were great. And one day he stopped me and he said, no, really, I don't want to hear, yeah, I did it. If I didn't, I know I made a mistake over there. I said, you really want to have this talk? And he goes, yeah. And I said, okay. Every day when you come here, I'm going to tell you exactly what you did wrong, but you
yeah,
got to make sure you can handle it.
yeah,
We built our relationship from there. I coached him, I think 5 years after that, and just never ever quit.
yeah,
But he kept coming to me going, I really want to know. And that impacted me a lot because it was like, look, coaching isn't just about, hey, rah, rah, you guys are awesome, keep
mm,
going. It's also about using the rah, rah and the positive to be critical, to be constructively, constructive criticism, put that out there, and to help them get better because deep down, they all really do want to get better. And
yeah,
they really do want to be the best they can be. They don't just want to hear, oh, you're great. Here's your
yep.
participation trophy.
Hmm.
He changed that for me. He really did.
So if you were to walk into a room with everybody that knows you professionally, clients, everybody that's seen you speak in a professional sense, and you could swim through that room of people, go to a podium and tell them one fun story, maybe the best sporting event you ever witnessed, first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, outrunning a bear, a skill that you have that no one knows about. What would you tell that room of people? A fun story that would humanize you a little bit to them.
I would that's a tough one because there's so many ways to go with that, brother.
Right.
So many ways to go
Yes,
with that
there.
one.
And it can be unsafe too.
I think in order to kind of check all the boxes that I possibly can with one story, I think I would go tell him a story about Jordan's last game against the Jazz in the championships, where he hits the winning shot, and the whole place goes berserk. And the reason I tell him that story is not just because you actually had a chance to witness greatness, um, but because none of us at that moment realized it was the last time we were really going to see it.
Yeah.
None of us fully appreciated that moment. And so, no matter how many times you go back and watch it, now that you realize that that was it, that was the end of this dynasty, that was the end of this, like almost perfection in motion that you could watch. One of the most incredible people in the world in terms of how he pushed himself, how he, went for perfection every day. All the lessons he could have been teaching us if we could have got past the fanfare and just really gotten them. And the message would be, look, this was fantastic and this was an amazing moment. But my message to you is pay attention. Pay
Yeah.
attention to everything going on in your life, all the little things around you, because you never know when it's the last time you're going to see it.
Yeah.
You never know, what you can get out of it unless you're really paying attention. And greatness happens right under our noses for ourselves and for others. And most of the time, we don't realize it's greatness until it's gone. So take a minute and smell the roses, that type of thing.
The one thing I just realized while you were talking about Michael Jordan, and I never thought about this until right now, is the thing I appreciate the most. There's so many things, and I love Jordan, was that he's one of the few best ever that we can actually go back and look at everything archival of his entire career. You can't do that for Babe Ruth. You can't do that for Jim
Yeah.
Brown. There's a lot of these guys where TV and things weren't happening. Maybe some radio here and there, but it would be splotchy. But if you wanted to go and look at what Jordan did from the minute he left the Tar Heels and went in, you could
Mhm.
totally, absolutely see it, which is told because he's one of the best that in any sport that ever did anything, you know,
Right.
easily,
Totally agree.
So absolutely.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, of
Mhm.
everything you've done more specifically professionally, what are you the proudest of?
Hmm. That's a tough one too, because I absolutely love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Love what I'm doing. I literally am living my dream right now. And I'm very proud of what I do. But when you go back and you look at all of it, I think my proudest moment was right before COVID, which is kind of funny because you asked me about that.
Yeah.
I always went for the best job, the that I could get, the most money I could get, most prestige, whatever it was. Always tried to kind of level up, keep going. And when I was in sales prior to COVID, I mean, I had achieved a lot of that. A lot of awards on the wall. I was teaching others how to sell. Had built a name for myself in the industry, so that was great. You don't want to leave that. That makes you feel, good and positive. I swallowed all that for what I knew I had to do to take care of my family. And I went, you know what? I mean, I'm about to become a bread guy, going to stores, being on my knees, stocking shelves, driving a truck. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with any of that. It was a great, great living. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But man, when you've been, all the way up here and you feel like your whole personality and your self-worth is wrapped up in your titles and your accolades and everything else. And then you say, I'm throwing it all away because it doesn't matter. Because tomorrow, if this is gone, I have things to do. So that's where I'm the most proud of that, to be honest. I thought
Yeah.
I had a different answer to that question, I'll be honest with you, until you
Yeah.
just asked me.
Yeah.
But now I really think that's it. I think that's it.
So you clearly have a good voice, and one of the great things about podcasting
Thanks.
and broadcasting is we have these memorable voices that go through our heads, and it's one of the reasons why people love listening to podcasts and broadcasts. Mine and I just rediscovered this because when I was a kid, I used to have this thing called Sports Talk, and it
Mhm.
was a machine, and you would open the top, and it was a big baseball card that had a record on the back, and you put it in, and it was like a little record player and Mel Allen was on there, and I remember he always did This Week in Baseball. I was just thinking about how unbelievably wonderful that voice was between him and Vince Scully. Who was that voice for you that you could always go back to? It would always take you back to that warm place that kick-started that motor of you wanting to be in front of a microphone. What was that voice for you?
Easy one. Paul Harvey.
Oh man,
Oh yeah, Paul Harvey. The
rest of the
rest of the
story.
story. Oh yeah. when I was in real estate, I actually stole his little moniker there, rest of the story,
Yep.
because my name's Rory. So I was like, call Rory for the rest of the story. That was
Love
on
it.
all my advertising, and everybody's like, "Where'd you get that from?" Because no one knew who Paul Harvey was, at
Yeah.
that point. And I was like, "Really? You don't know who Paul Harvey is?
Yeah.
Rest of the story? Come on!" He was actually still on the radio, and people just didn't get it. But it worked, and
Yeah.
honestly, I could pick his voice out of a lineup, eyes closed,
Yeah.
half asleep, because he knew how to tell a story, man. He really
Oh
did,
man, he
and
really
that was the
did.
thing for me. He was the guy.
I worked an internship for the Kansas City Royals for a radio station. It was pre and post game, like just low end intern work. And I remember he came on the first time and I never heard him before. And I was like, wait, what? Hold on. And everybody there that was in that station, the sound, the collective kind of ambient sound went down because everybody listened. I always remember that about Paul. It was just like he was a broadcaster's broadcaster, that's for sure, you know.
Yes, he was. Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, listeners, everyone that watches you speak, that delves into your world, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I'm a big teddy bear that comes off as scarier than he really is. I'm a larger guy, and so I'm sure that there are a lot of people who think I'm ferocious. But that's just because I'm tenacious and I don't give up and I don't believe in giving up. I've accomplished a lot in terms of just never stopping the fight. So I may not be the guy that has the perfect strategy or the best weapon, or the best, shot or anything else, but I am the guy that's never gonna stop getting up. And eventually you're gonna get tired of trying to put me down and I'm gonna win. So
I love
that's
it.
my perception of me. So
So if anybody wants to tune in to your fine work, they want to see you speak, they want to hire you as a coach, any of the good business, where do they go?
honestly, Facebook is the best place for me. That's where a lot of folks my age are at, and that's where I kind of house everything. And it's just my name. It's at Rory Paquette right there on the screen. I'm sure it'll be in your show notes. Just look me up on Facebook. You can't miss, this big Italian mug, as my profile pic. So just find me on Facebook, guys, and you can get everything from there. Message me the whole bit. Just
I
kidding.
love it. This has been great. Rory, what a joy, man. So great to run into you. So great to have this conversation. Best of luck. Keep changing the world, man.
Thank you, Joe. I love this. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.